I now recognize our last speaker, my colleague in Congress, Congressman Huffman, who has developed several pieces of legislation on this issue and worked with the committee on it. Thank you for being here for the whole hearing. You are now recognized for your 5 minutes.
Chair Maloney, thanks so much for allowing me to participate and for holding this important hearing. I have been leading the charge for postal fleet electrification along with my friend Representative Connolly for nearly a decade now. I'm proud to be co-sponsoring the Postal Vehicle Modernization Act with you, Chair Maloney, and with Representative Connolly. And I'm sorry that Congress may have to legislate common sense, the same common sense that has led all of the Postal Service's private sector competitors to move quickly to all EV fleets without asking Congress for any money to do it. As we've heard from several expert witnesses, the business case for doing this is a no-brainer. In fact, with EV costs declining, EV technology improving, gas prices soaring, and vehicle manufacturers moving away from internal combustion, it would be really hard to cook up a model or a business case that favors lumbering internal combustion vehicles that get an average of 8.6 miles per gallon over EVs, the same EVs that are going to be powering fleets at FedEx, Amazon, UPS, and DHS. But that's exactly what the Postal Service did with this contract and this program, calling for vehicles that are built for obsolescence. They will literally be the last internal combustion fleet vehicles on the road 20 years from now. So, Ms. Stephen, you testified that the Postal Service's sensitivity analysis on gas prices led you double the initial order of EVs to just over 10,000. Does this mean that you're also doubling the total fleet purchase from 10% to 20%?
When you refer to the total fleet purchase, are you referring to the 50,000? Just so that I'm clear.
The entire contract, contract.
No, this is specific to this initial investment decision. We've made contract for 50.
That's what I thought. And if the only change is a slight increase to the initial order, it is hard to see how this sensitivity analysis has really changed much. It seems more like a reaction to the public criticism and political pressure that you've been getting over buying vehicles that'll get 8.6 miles to the gallon. Ms. Imani, you testified that under the model GAO reviewed, the Postal Service was showing higher maintenance costs for EVs. Ms. Stephen just testified that that's incorrect. It misunderstands the data. And so let me ask you, were you correct when you said after reviewing the USPS model, it showed higher maintenance costs for EVs?
This is one of the inconsistencies that we've seen in the information that we've gotten so far from the Postal Service. Some of the information, including what Ms. Stevens said today, is that the maintenance costs would be less for electric vehicles. However, when we looked at the formula in the model itself, in the Excel spreadsheet that we've received of the model, we don't see that in that formula. We see a different amount that's used in that model that indicates that the maintenance costs would be higher. So there's definitely, it's an iterative process, our ongoing work, and we'll get additional information from the Postal Service and make our final conclusions.
I appreciate that. Mr. Britton, in your colloquy with Representative Wasserman Schultz, you highlighted another important discrepancy, the assumption by the Postal Service that the start and stop nature of many routes favored internal combustion engines, when in fact it's a strong selling point for EVs, correct?
That's correct.
And then there's the problem with the Postal Service assumptions about EV range, a 70-mile vehicle range. In your extensive work in this field, including the vehicles that companies like GM, Ford, and Rivian are providing to private fleets, did USPS use the correct assumption about battery range?
No, it is far inconsistent with what we're seeing in the marketplace, and I'll give you a couple examples. The Ford E-Transit van gets nearly 2 miles per kilowatt hour in the battery pack. The Workhorse C-Series gets 1.5 miles per kilowatt hour in the battery pack. The Arrival van that is being contracted with UPS gets 1.7 miles per kilowatt hour in the battery pack. The USPS assumption is that this vehicle gets 0.7 of a mile per kilowatt hour in the battery pack. The only other vehicle that we have seen that has that inefficient of an electric drivetrain would be a Class 8 tractor trailer or semi-truck fully weighted down. It is impossible that a last mile delivery truck.
And if the model used the correct range assumptions, wouldn't that significantly affect the total cost of ownership analysis, including the number of charging stations needed to support these vehicles?
That's correct. You would not need nearly as many charging stations as the Postal Service is asserting.
And Ms. Nimani, you also flagged another problem that the Postal Service initially didn't account for the amount of air conditioning used in the real world. And when you correct for that, the performance drops to 8.6 miles to the gallon on average, correct?
Right, that's another thing that we saw in the model that we've received from the Postal Service, that the fuel efficiency used was around 15 miles per gallon, which is the efficiency when the air conditioning isn't running, and it's less when the air conditioning is running. We've heard from the Postal Service that there is another place in the model that may account for the use of the air conditioning, and so that's something else that we'll be continuing to look at in our ongoing work.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have learned a lot today about errors and discrepancies that seem to go right to the heart of this unusual decision that is so at odds with what the private sector is doing. Thanks so much for this important hearing.
Well, thank you for waving on and all of your hard work, along with all the committee members on this issue. Thank you so much. You made a very valuable contribution